This this movie, like, I have so much love and affection for it because this, and I've mentioned on the podcast before, this is the first Jeffrey Combs film I ever saw.
I think it was mine too. I saw this in the theater when it came out.
Oh, nice.
I definitely had not seen Reanimator by that point.
I saw this, I guess I was about 12 or so, 11 or 12, and I
Me
was in a
too.
big, I was in a big, like, Michael J. Fox phase in my life.
Mhm.
And so much the same of what I'm doing with the Jeffrey Combs challenge. I was like determined to watch every single Michael J. Fox movie I could find. And the video store that I used to go to had, God, this makes me feel so fucking old, but there was a big book, like a physical book in the middle of the
Uh-huh.
store that
Oh
was
yeah.
like IMDb.
Like
So
was
it
it
would have
called like the Video Retriever or something like that?
something like that. It was just like an encyclopedia. And so, you would just go through and you would go to the index and you would look up your favorite actor and it would just have lists of the films that were available. And I guess they just got a new one every year.
Oh, that's cool. So it was specifically for that video store? And you could find every movie they had with each actor in it?
No, I don't think it was specific to the video store. I think it was just
Okay.
like, this is just what movies they have done that are on, would have been VHS at the time.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, I would just go through every week. We would go there. We would get 7 weeklies for $7.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. It was nice. And we'd, like, every single week I would go and try and find a new Michael J. Fox film that I hadn't seen.
Mhm.
And this one, like, I loved it because Michael J. Fox is amazing in it as well. But
Yeah.
Jeff's performance stayed with me for all of those years.
He is extremely memorable in it.
It's one of his best roles, and we'll obviously talk about why. But first and foremost, I guess I should introduce you, I suppose.
I guess.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Chad Opitz, welcome to Reanimates.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
I liked the kismet with which you ended up on this podcast. I think you tweeted something about literally just wanting to talk about the films of Jeffrey Combs.
I did. Yeah. And then you were like, well, you're in luck because I have a podcast where that's what we do. And I was like, what?
Well, it wasn't even me. I was, I guess, whatever the good version of Snitch Tagged is by Harrison. If you're listening, thank you.
Yep.
He brought us together.
Absolutely.
In case it's not clear to you, listener, we are covering the Frighteners because it's one of, I guess, the kinds of films that is extremely underrated. I think, like, it's not just like one of Jeff's best sort of roles, but it's so weird and fun, and it has so many good elements in it. I don't know why it didn't do like amazing. Like, I think it did fine, but it should have done.
It should have done way better, and I think it didn't do very well upon release. Honestly, like, I kind of remember it being like a big bomb. I think a big factor, honestly, was the release date. They released it in the middle of the summer. And it's not it should have been like a fall movie or something. They should have like promoted it as like a Halloween time flick or something like that.
Well, yeah, because it's a very wintry film. We'll talk about the location in a bit, but it's set in, quote unquote, a New England town, but it is extremely obviously New Zealand.
Absolutely. Yes.
What this episode is going to be more than a recap, because I assume you, dear listener, have already seen this film. Of all the films you're likely to have seen, it'll be this one. This is more going to be an ad for the Blu-ray of this film, because
which has a lot of special features.
So many. It has, I think, over 3 and almost 4 hours worth of behind-the-scenes stuff, which, as someone that is still a big physical media fan and loves a special feature, that was a huge boon for me.
Can I ask you a question?
You may.
You said you discovered this movie via, you went on this, I'm going to see every Michael J. Fox movie. So then when you saw this one, is that what led you to be like, I got to see every Jeffrey Combs movie?
Not at the time, no, because I would have been pretty young. I just sort of remembered Jeffrey Combs in that movie, and I would always come back to it, and I'd always think that's one of my favorite roles in any film because it's so strange. Yeah. And then, when I got a bit older and started watching a lot more horror movies, that's when I saw would have been Reanimator. And I didn't really decide to do the whole I'm going to watch every single Jeffrey Combs film until the lockdowns of, I think, 2020. That was like my lockdown challenge.
That's a fun lockdown.
As fun as any lockdown could be, if you're gonna spend it with anybody, you might as well spend it with Jeffrey Combs.
100%.
And then, as with most things, I just sort of went, well, why not make a podcast out of this?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And I'm so glad that you had this one to talk about because this is the one that I wanted to talk about.
I reckon I have watched it repeatedly more than every other film because I've probably watched it
Me
once
too.
a year since it came out.
Yeah, I've probably seen it at least a dozen times.
There's just so much fun about it, and it was really nice in terms of Jeff's performance. It was really nice to see what the difference with things like, I know they had a lot of rehearsal time for this film, which I guess can make all the difference in terms of like fleshing out a character. And also he was given a huge, and most of the actors were given a huge amount of freedom in improv and having their own creative input on the character. Like it was Jeff's idea to have Dammers' Hitlerian haircut.
Yeah.
I believe Jeff was also integral in creating the various scars and tattoos on his chest.
Yeah.
Yes, he was heavily involved, and yeah, it does make a big difference compared to, I guess, if you're more of like a jobbing actor, you just go on, you do your thing, you leave.
There's certain lines that you're like, I'm pretty sure he came up with that one, or like Sheriff Perry, you're invading my territorial bubble.
Milton, can I get you anything? Sheriff Perry, you are violating my territorial bubble.
That one just, like, stuck out to me. I was like, was that in the script?
It's so strange, like, but it's good because he's the very weird center of the film. I mean, there's a couple of other characters that are odd,
Yeah,
but he's the big deal.
another thing about it is like because he really does dominate every scene that he's in, and you leave the movie remembering him, but he doesn't show up till like more than halfway through the movie. I always forget that he doesn't come in till like way late in the movie. Then on in, he's a huge part of it, but before then, like, I mean, it's got to be at least 45 minutes before he has a scene in it.
Yeah, and once he is in, he jumps in and out. He ends up being quite a driving force. I mean, he ends up being, I guess, sort of one of the villains in the end.
Yeah.
But well, for those who haven't seen it, very rough plot outline. So Michael J. Fox plays, I guess, a con man, but also a genuine, I guess, spiritual medium.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's perpetrating this con, but he also genuinely can see ghosts.
Yeah.
So he can see these ghosts after a traumatic accident where his wife died. The film follows him and his ghosts trying to, score up some money. He eventually meets Lucy, who's a doctor who just moved to town. Frank, Michael J. Fox, has to battle the Grim Reaper.
Yes. With the help of his ghostly pals.
His cronies.
Yeah, there's like a buddy element to it.
It was directed by Peter Jackson, the great man.
For his first American film.
Oh, was it? Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Because I think before this was Heavenly Creatures.
Yeah.
There are at least two people who worked on this film who said that Heavenly Creatures was the reason they wanted to do the film.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Who are
Michael J. Fox and Danny Elfman, who did the music.
Oh, okay.
Well,
That
both
makes
of
a
them
lot
were
of sense.
like, I loved Heavenly Creatures so much, I would just do whatever this director asked me to.
Oh, that's really cool.
Have you seen Heavenly Creatures? It's really good.
I mean, I've seen every film of his. Yeah, I'm a big Peter Jackson fan. I
And,
love his early like weirdo gore comedies.
Oh yeah, Brain Dead brackets Dead Alive is
Mhm.
one of my all-time favorite horror
Oh,
movies.
it's
Dear
one of the
listener,
best
if you ever
movies
want
ever.
a fun movie to put on at like a horror movie night with some friends and some beer, Dead Alive / Brain
Yep.
Dead is absolutely one of the best.
I mean, it might be the best in terms of like fun party time horror movie. Good Lord,
Yeah.
that's a fun movie.
Because it's not even one of those films where you would put it on and you would just it would be in the background of a party while you were having beers with your mates. Like you would genuinely want to watch it,
Absolutely.
but it would be so much fun.
One of the most bonkers endings ever. The last like 40 minutes of that movie is just nonstop like gore gags the whole time.
A frankly obscene amount of fake blood for any film, probably the most I've ever seen.
It's gotta be.
So it was written by Jackson and his longtime creative collaborator / wife, Fran Walsh. I think one of the other reasons it might have not done that great in the States as well is because it was rated R there. In the extras, he talks about Jackson talks about wanting to make a PG-13 film.
And it feels like it. I don't really understand the reasoning behind the rating. It's so odd to me. It absolutely has the tone of a PG-13 film. It's not like a hard-edged movie. I think maybe the only thing I could think of for it being rated R was like Dee Wallace's character in the past was supposed to be like an underage girl, who's like involved with them, killing and stuff like that. So I think there's sort of a seedy element story-wise there. But other than that, I can't really think of why they would rate this R, because it's not particularly graphically violent. I think it must be the thematic thing there.
It's incredibly arbitrary, as we've seen with a lot of censoring and rating stuff. I mean, it's the same here, but I imagine it's worse in the States. There was a thing that Danny Elfman mentions in the behind the scenes, because he took his 11-year-old daughter to the premiere, and she was like, "Oh, is there going to be anything really bad for me to see?" And she came out of the movie, she was like, "Why was that rated R? That's insane."
Yeah.
Something he mentioned was that there's a scene where I think Dee Wallace's character shoots with a giant shotgun, shoots a door, and there's like 4 or 5 shots that go through this door. And apparently that was too many.
Like that door was too graphically murdered. That's crazy.
Like, oh, you could shoot a door once, but if you shoot it more than once, that is unacceptable.
It's overkill. It's a door though. That's very strange.
And it's completely arbitrary because, look at other films that have similar things. Anyway.
You know what movie it's actually a lot like tonally is Men in Black, which came out a year later. It has the same sort of feel as that in a lot of ways. They're both
I can see that.
Fun, like creature monster movies with comedy involved.
Yeah.
A lot of cool special effects, both makeup and CG. I don't know, and that one's not rated R, so it doesn't really make sense for the Frighteners to be rated R. The only thing I can think of is that the fact that her character as like a child was involved with like that murder stuff.
Well, yes, because Dee Wallace's character is a young girl who back in the, I think, 60s or 70s, hooks up with an orderly at a hospital who goes on a violent rampage.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up sort of inhabiting the Reaper character that we sort of see. Another reason that Men in Black probably feels a lot like the Frighteners is Danny Elfman did the music for Men in Black as well.
True. Yeah, correct.
It was also it was produced by Robert Zemeckis, who does a lot of that really fun horror comedy stuff. One of the only times you see Danny Elfman on the extras, it's very funny because he's such a freak. And one of the only times you see him on there is he's talking about the scene in the film where Patricia, having brought Johnny Bartlett, her orderly boyfriend, back to life. Well, back from the dead in terms of he comes back as a ghost. And she is repeatedly stabbing him with a knife despite him being a ghost. And it's sort of going right through him. But he's getting a sort of sexual thrill out of that.
Yeah.
And that was the part that Danny Elfman really liked, and he was annoyed that it got cut off.
Oh, well, maybe that's one of the reasons it got rated R, because I bet there were some weirdos in the MPAA who were like, "That's too sexual," or something like that.
I can't imagine there's weirdos working in film censoring and rating.
No, absolutely not. No way. No how.
No. My favorite thing is there is a scene where they're filming in Littleton in New Zealand, which is just outside of Christchurch. If you're ever in New Zealand, I guess you can go and visit. But there's an incredibly cute bit where Michael J. Fox is sitting on the set and he's just like chatting to these local kids who I guess have come to the set for some reason. He does say when he's talking to these kids that he is 33 at the time, which I guess makes sense. He was born in 61.
Yeah, he would have been like 34, 33, 34, something like that.
Which is crazy because, you know, we look at something like this and I would look at this as something like mid to late career Michael J. Fox. Like,
yeah, totally. Well, because he started so young. Yeah,
you sort of forget how much he did that was so iconic and so pivotal in his career before he was even 30. Like,
yep. I mean, most of it.
It's crazy.
Especially because he quit acting due to his Parkinson's, like not that long after this.
He was diagnosed, I think.
I thought it was like 91 or 92.
He starts showing symptoms during Doc Hollywood.
Yeah,
which is 91. So he would have had it during filming this. It's incredibly surprising to see how much he worked while he was in the throes of this incredibly painful thing.
He didn't come out. He didn't come forward with it till 98, I believe, like another couple of years after this. And he knew for like 7 years that he had it. He just didn't come public with it. That's part of his, there's a documentary about him called Still. Yeah, which was really, really good.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
I think they do briefly mention the Frighteners. It's like he wanted to take the gig, not partly also because like it was filming far away in New Zealand for like a long period of time. So it was like he was getting away from people who, you know, might know that he had it. And so it was almost like his way of like getting away from it in a way.
He did a lot of his own stunts in this film. And
yeah, the part where he gets hit by the car.
Yeah, that was his idea too.
Yeah, that's really cool.
He was like, what if I just like slide over the bonnet here? That'd be fun.
Great too.
What's funny is that he does all of his own stunts and, you know, he nails it all, but he actually does get injured at some point in the film. And it's not even for a stunt. It's literally, it's the scene where after he's been in the car crash with Magda Rees-Jones, who's the newspaper editor in the town who thinks that he's a crazed maniac. They get into a car accident. They roll down a hill. He gets out of the car on the set. He just like steps in a hole in like a weird way and he just like fucks his foot.
Oh no.
Yeah, and so in that scene, if you watch it, when you watch him, he's running away screaming in through the forest and he has a very pronounced limp, and that's real because he had fucked his foot in that scene.
I never noticed that before.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you just look at it, you're like, oh, he's just been in a car accident. So, you know, he's probably busted his leg. But yeah, he had to take a couple of weeks off filming because it was just like stepping in a weird way. Yeah.
Wow.
So the comedic element of the film comes from the ghost cronies that we talked about, which were given a lot of freedom in terms of like adding zingers, and there's a lot of improv in this, and there's a lot of like, you know, deleted scenes and stuff on the Blu-ray that show how much freedom they were given. So we've got Jim Fife as Stuart, who's the nerdy ghost.
Therefore, a happy ghost is a productive ghost. To that end, I've drawn up a list of suggestions. Bear in mind, Frank, that we've given you 5 years of loyal service.
We've got Chi McBride as Cyrus, who's like the sassy ghost.
I'm about to go like Jesse on your ass. I'm gonna find me some other black ghosts and then organize a march. The African American Apparition Coalition, the AAAC. And I'm gonna tell you something, Frank. It ain't nothing worse than a bunch of pissed off brothers that's already dead.
Yeah, like the 70s, like kind of mod squad ghost.
And then there's the judge, who I don't know what time period he's meant to be from. He looks sort of 1880s era.
Yeah, I assume like Wild West.
Well, yeah, because he's always coming in with guns a-blazing.
Don't go saying nothing to the boys, but my ectoplasm is all dried up.
He's played by John Aston, who was the original fucking Gomez Adams back in the 60s.
Adams, yeah. Hell yeah. He's great.
And he's still alive.
I know, he's like 94.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
His first film credit was 1957.
Holy shit.
But yeah, so Chi McBride, he initially wasn't going to take the role. He thought it was kind of like a bit stereotypical.
Okay.
And then he was swayed again by having seen Heavenly Creatures and also seen how well Heavenly Creatures did. Obviously, Peter Jackson was like very much like giving him a huge amount of freedom, and that's what ended up getting him on board.
But you can tell he must have improvised a ton of stuff in it.
I mean, Peter Jackson admits as much on the Blu-ray, which is that his strength doesn't lie in writing comedic dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, I'm going to hand that over to
you. Yeah, you deal with it.
I'll deal with all of the, the directing shit. You just make the funnies.
Yeah.
I always wonder whenever I see a film that has a lot of improv, I always wonder if that's always a good thing. Like, I wonder if there's films where they wanted to try that and it's just gone really badly.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it has. It has to have. They're like, well, this is not working. And then they have to hire like a different writer or something like that. Yeah,
just having too much faith in the improv abilities of your actors.
I'm actually buddies with an actor who's in the movie, the guy that plays Sheriff Perry, Troy Evans.
Oh, yes.
I've hung out with him a bunch of times.
Oh, lovely.
And, he's friends with Jeffrey Combs. He says he's known Jeff since like the early 80s. They did like local theater in like the LA area together. And I asked him about this film. I asked him specifically about Peter Jackson as a director, and he was very upfront. He was like, the guy's not great with actors. he kind of lets the second unit guy deal with the actors a lot because he wants to deal with like the fun stuff, like the puppets and things like that. He's like Peter's great with that stuff. He's not the best with like talking about emotions with actors and shit, which is makes sense. It really checks out, honestly.
Everyone's got their strengths, and I guess especially because he wrote it, he probably had a good idea of the story, like the bones of it, and then was just kind of like, I'll just bring in people who know what they're doing, and then they can fill in the color.
Yeah.
Next time you see Troy Evans, you tell him he's got some of the best jowls I've ever seen on film.
He will love that. He will absolutely love that. He says that like on every single set, the like hair and makeup people always come up to him and try to trim his eyebrows, and he has to be like, "Get away from my money makers! I'm not here to look pretty. I'm a character actor." He's a great storyteller. He's really, really funny. He's got a bunch of fun stories and stuff. Yeah,
he should do a Stephen Tobolowsky. He should just do a podcast and just tell stories from.
He would be phenomenal with that. Stephen Tobolowsky was a great storyteller.
Yeah. You could just have a podcast where he tells stories about being in movies. People would love that.
It's a great idea. I actually I got Troy in contact with my friend Nick, who runs a show here in LA called Talkies, which does like not improv, but like sketch and things like that. And every other month or so, Troy will just get up and tell a story from like filming something. So it was great. People always love it.
The other people in this film who are really good, but wouldn't necessarily be household names. The female lead / love interest, Lucy, is played by Trini Alvarado, who, she's got like a few interesting, bits on her IMDb, but didn't do like a huge lot else after this. Like she's had kind of like a very sparing career. I think she's got less than 40 sort of credits on her IMDb, when you look at her IMDb, it's like one every, few years.
Mm-hmm.
And
is this the biggest credit? I try to think like what other stuff she's been in. I know that there's one that I remember before this one, I think, but I really can't remember anything she did after this. Actually, she reminds me a lot of Andie MacDowell in a way.
Well, she was in the 1990s, the 1994 Little Women.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, look, she did a bunch of, she did a lot of TV, a lot of like TV movies, just, she did a bunch of stuff and then just sort of did bits and pieces since then. But I don't know, maybe she discovered a life outside of films. Who would do that?
Who the hell would want to do that?
So as mentioned, Patricia is played by Dee Wallace, who, if you listen to this podcast, you would absolutely know she's done a bunch of stuff with Jeff. But if you don't recall, she's the mum in E.T. and Cujo, and she's also in The Howling. Yeah, she's great. Love Dee Wallace.
She's a genre icon.
Yeah, she's a scream queen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think like in terms of personal scream queens, for me, it's like Dee Wallace, Barbara Crampton, Lynn Shay.
Oh, Lynn Shay's great. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the people that I just like associate with horror films.
Yeah, and holy shit, has Barbara Crampton held up well? Good Lord. Like, I just saw a movie that came out like last year, and I was like, dude, she looks almost the exact same as she did in like From Beyond. It's crazy.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's like, she's a great internet follow. She's very fun on
Twitter,
on social media. She's great. Whenever they do cons, it's very funny. Always trying to get Jeff do like online content.
Mm-hmm.
She's got fun mom energy.
Yes.
Lucy's husband is played by a guy called Peter Dobson.
Very good in this.
He's very good. He has this when I read that the actor is from New Jersey, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like he's really trying to cover up a New Jersey accent.
He's got that look about him for sure.
Why? Because he looks Italian?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like I was looking at his IMDb, and the thing that I found the most interesting was that he played Elvis in Forrest Gump.
Oh, dude, really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
This movie also has, in terms of like interesting character actors, I don't know if you'd call him a character actor. He definitely has a characterful face. But Johnny Bartlett, the mass murderer, is played by Jake Busey.
The baby boy of Gary Busey.
My God, the family resemblance.
Those teeth.
You cannot escape it.
Pass down those teeth, those gigantic teeth.
You do not need to be told he is a Busey. That is.
Oh, no.
That is radiating out from that head.
One of the most obvious father-son duos ever.
Very strong genes in the Busey family.
There's another, in fact, God, I just saw that movie Cobweb, and there's another Busey, like a younger Busey kid who plays like the bully.
Oh my God.
He's very obviously a Busey child.
Oh, too many
Same
Buseys.
sort of thing. Yeah, where it's like, yeah, there's too many Buseys.
Oh my God, they're replicating.
Too many Buseys.
Oh,
Yeah,
Gary's
they're still going strong.
Gary's just laying eggs all over the place.
It is. It's crazy.
There's also a fun cameo from Ali Ermey.
Oh, yeah.
Who, I mean, listeners, you know him immediately from Full Metal Jacket. He's the drill sergeant. And he's basically that in this.
Yes. Oh, yes. Definitely the same character.
Yeah, they don't talk about why they got him in. I thought it was a really strange choice to basically get him to cameo as a character that he had made famous 20 odd years previously.
Yes.
There's something about it that feels cheap when people like a character that you played and then they get you in for a film because they like you and they just make you play the same character.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's very blatantly the exact same thing.
He's a ghost drill sergeant in the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it'd be kind of like getting Jeffrey Combs and you just get him to play Herbert West. Like,
yes, which he does not do in this film. It's a completely different character, like wildly different character.
All right, well let's talk about Milton Dammers, Jeffrey's character. He works for the FBI. He has come to Fairwater, the town that this is set, fictional town, to investigate these series of deaths that are happening in the town, which end up being perpetrated by Johnny Bartlett because they're very mysterious deaths. I believe Mr. Troy Evans describes them as like their hearts are just being crushed.
Yes.
The character of Milton Dammers is a man very dedicated to his job and his country. I believe Jeff describes him as nationalistic to the point of fascism.
Mm-hmm. As seen by the haircut.
Yes. The various bits of lore in terms of the character is very interesting. The different things that are being written about the character.
They can make some fun fan fiction based on this guy for sure.
You are a fool if you don't think that's out there already. But basically, the Dammers has been undercover with religious cults and sects for many, many years, and it has
undercover
driven him irrevocably insane.
As you can tell by his cold, dead eyes.
Yes, I can't remember whose idea it was for Dammers to have black contact lenses to just have these cold, soulless eyes. But it's a very good touch, especially when they go in for those close-ups.
Yeah, on the like interrogation scene and stuff like that.
Well, for those who haven't seen it, and frankly for those who have seen it and just want to enjoy it again, here is a little clip of probably my favorite scene, Jeff interrogating Michael J. Fox's character because he thinks that Frank is responsible for this litany of deaths in the town.
Have you ever heard of Nina Kolagina? March 10, 1970, Nina Kolagina, with the power of her mind, stopped the beat of a frog's heart. The record of this experiment is currently held in the files of Professor Gennady Sergeyev of St. Petersburg. As Sergeyev interpreted this cardiogram, it seemed to him that the heart had experienced a sudden flare-up of electrical activity. The heart imploded, the arteries burst, and all because Nina Kolagina wanted the animal dead.
Like, honestly, he's doing such a good job. I'm so there's such a good reason why this role and this performance stayed with me for 20 odd years after the fact.
Mm-hmm. I think if this movie had been like a bigger hit, Jeff Combs' career would have gotten way bigger because he's amazing in it. I honestly, I'm not even kidding. I think he should have gotten like an Academy Award nomination for this. It's extremely funny, like it's very memorable. He like walks away with every scene he's in. I think he's phenomenal in this movie.
Well, it's so often the case with him where he's he's just making magic out of the small roles because and again I think so much of it is because he was given like a fair amount of freedom and rehearsal time. Again, Peter Jackson was a huge fan of Jeff's as well. Like he got him in specifically because he loved Reanimator. I think on the Blu-ray he just says something like, "What's the Reanimator guy up to these days?"
Yeah, yeah. He's got a great look. He's got a really interesting look. He just sells everything so well. His line deliveries are really interesting and unique.
Some really good physical humor as well, and because he's this very squirrely, uncomfortable yet quite vicious character.
I mean, when they very first see him and they're like seeing him through the window in the police station, and the way he kind of like backs away and like exits the like camera view, he's like nervous and he doesn't like looking at them very awkwardly. It's so well done, and it's like such a great like who's this fucking weirdo,
Yeah, I'll post some clips of the way he's acting in the scene you're talking about. Just the way he just hangs outside the door of the office he's meant to be inside is very strange. Yelling from outside the door and then backing away.
Yeah, he's peeking around the corner. Like it's very funny.
He also it was his idea to he went to like the costumey makeup people and he asked for something to force his ears forward.
Oh yeah.
Because basically the haircut he had gotten was shaved just above the ears, and obviously I'll post a lot of pictures, but you can see that his ears are very prominent, and I think he just thought that it was funnier if he had these kind of like garish ears popping out.
Yeah, there's a lot of good choices in that regard, like just the little stylistic choices, his gloves and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the only thing I don't like, I don't know if this was his idea, but the kind of weird character choice of him having like hemorrhoids.
Oh yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
See, I think
when he pulls out that donut.
That's a funny moment, but I don't really get the point of that. The character thing, like I don't understand what that's meant to be saying about the character. Like, I feel like because there is a deleted scene where and they deleted it because it's when Dammers is taking Lucy away in a police car. So she's in the back and he doesn't like women yelling, and so she starts screaming to try to knock him off his rhythm. And as he holds his hands up to his ears, she can see in the rearview mirror that he has a swastika on his hand. They ended up cutting this out because the audiences just thought that meant that the character was a Nazi and they just didn't care. But then the dialogue after that is Dammers explaining that he had gone undercover with the Manson family at Spahn Ranch, and that for 6 months he was a Manson sex slave. Yes.
Oh, so you think that they were implying that he had like a permanently fucked up butthole or whatever?
yeah. Like, and I don't know. That was just, I don't know.
See, I never thought of that. Like, I always just assumed, he had hemorrhoids or something. I thought it was just a funny little goof. Like, I never read too into it. I thought it's just that funny reveal of that like red donut, and also just the expression he makes when he sits down. I thought was funny.
Without the addition of those of a couple of other scenes that add to the Dammers lore, like those jokes take on a new dimension. Like outside of that, they're just silly butt jokes, I suppose. But again, I don't know. It seemed very. There's a few things in this movie that were cut out that were very, very silly, and I'm glad they cut them out because they would be too silly.
I do think it might have been smart of them to cut out the Nazi thing, just because like it's not really necessary. I don't know. And if it does confuse people and just make them think his character's a Nazi, then why not just take it out?
I think that was the idea, because people just saw the swastika and they didn't really listen to the dialogue after that. They were just like, oh, he must be a Nazi. I don't care about this character anymore.
Especially because his haircut, too. It's just like, all right, we get the point. Like, it was that would be too much, I think.
It's enough for him to be doggedly dedicated to his job with the American government. That's that's a bad enough sign as it is, really.
Yes,
That's enough of an indictment on his personality.
absolutely.
So there's a lot of very fun effects, both practical and digital. I think this was an interesting time in film history where there was that overlap between practical and digital effects. Some movies have come out better than others in this time period. There are some films that I think tried to use digital stuff to do things that would have looked better with practical effects. I mean, look, I'm very pro practical effects here at this podcast. I think it's almost always better. But the effects in this they're not bad for the time, especially. And I think that's maybe because Peter Jackson had and has an effects company out in New Zealand called Weta, which has both a digital and a practical effects division. And yeah, they put in a lot of effort to make the ghosts look really good, to try to do some like fun, gory stuff, despite the ghost being, like transparent and stuff.
Yeah.
There was going to be a very big puppet in this, and I'm glad they cut it out because it was basically going to be a big fat baby with little wings, tiny little wings. There was, I think he was called the gatekeeper, and he worked at the cemetery.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so he was kind of like the Ali Ermey character of, trying to keep bad ghosts out of the cemetery.
Yeah.
But when you see this big baby puppet in the behind the scenes, it looks straight out of Dead Alive.
Oh, okay.
It's very grotesque.
Yes.
And silly. I think it doesn't work.
Doesn't work with the rest of the effects and stuff too.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that works really well with Combs's performance is that he's so like over the top and cartoonish, and most of the other people are acting very sincerely. Like Michael J. Fox and Trina Alvarado and Troy Evans aren't playing it as if it's like a farce, No. And Jeffrey Combs is so cartoonish and like huge, and it's like it just amplifies his performance. But I think it actually, I love the contrast between him and the other actors. Like
I would say cartoonish as well, and I don't mean that to be a bad thing. I think that's more
I
often
think it's a compliment, honestly.
Oh yeah, for me it's a compliment. Unless we're talking about because I realized I probably use that word when I describe Moulin Rouge.
Okay.
Which is a film I can't watch because it's too baffling. But this isn't the Baz Luhrmann podcast, as unfucking watchable as Moulin Rouge happens to be. But yeah, I like that big cartoonish element. I think that's fun, and you might as well have stuff like that in a film like this, because otherwise, if you've only got the grounded trauma of grief stuff, it becomes a bit of a slog.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Like I think Jeffrey and the ghost characters are like the more like over the top, boisterous elements, and like the rest of the people. Most of the stuff in the movie though is like treated fairly like realistically. I just really like the interactions that the character has with the other characters, because by the end but when you first meet him, he's just this kind of like very uptight, officious kind of bureaucrat. Yeah. But by the end, he's kind of like, he's kind of actively hindering the hero's plot. Oh, he's a whole full-on raving psycho. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that he the switch finally goes because he I think when he reveals his chest of various scars and insignia, I think that really like sets a switch going. I think that maybe the character believes that his various trauma has allowed him psychic powers. Yes. Which it doesn't. The things that happen turn out to be another ghost doing it. Yes. There's a good extra on the Blu-ray called Trini's Bruises, which is an extra where Trini Alvarado talks about just how bruised up she got on the
set. But the fact that she was just all for it, and that she was incredibly dedicated. And there's a couple of scenes where she has like sort of a fight scene with Jeff's character. There's one bit where he has to throw her quite forcefully against a wall. And when you watch it in the film, it looks pretty bad. Like it looks like it would have, like I was like, oh, that looks like it really would have hurt. But he says in the extras that she was very into it. She was just kind of like, no, you can do it harder. Just, make it look good, just go for it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She's like, turn my body into a roadmap of pain.
Yeah. She's one of those people, like when I was watching the extras, I'm like, maybe it's better that you didn't become like a big star because you seem like a nice, normal person.
Yeah. It's like, get out of Hollywood now.
Yeah. Get out while you still can, while you still got your sanity.
You know what's a really funny sight gag in the movie is like when he's got the gun and she like, comes up next to him and he's all looking like, oh, freaked out by her. But then like she hits him with the fire extinguisher.
Yes.
Then Michael J. Fox like kicks. You don't see Jeffrey Combs on the ground because there's all this like fire extinguisher, muck around. But you just see Michael J. Fox like kick downwards and the gun comes flying up and he. It looks so good in it. It's a very underrated sight gag.
The scene that I alluded to earlier of Jeffrey's monologue when he's interrogating Michael J. Fox also comes with a series of very intense close-ups in Combs's eyes and mouth, which apparently Peter Jackson fucked up several takes of that because for some reason he just couldn't stop laughing. Like there was one scene where they're shooting Jeff's mouth and there's like a little drop of spit just going down his lip and down his chin. Mm-hmm. And Peter Jackson was just like obsessing about it. He's like, can he feel that? Does he know it's there? Mm-hmm. And then he's trying not to laugh. And then for some reason, Jeff wipes it away and he just pisses himself laughing.
Oh, that's so funny.
Like that's the fun. Like, it must just be after, 15-hour days. It's like, well, I guess anything.
You started going crazy. I have a friend though. My friend Nick was laughing uproariously at something the other day, and I was like, "What is it that you're laughing at?" And it was something like that, where it was just like a close up on like a mouth, and he was just like, "Isn't it funny how it's just when all you see is the mouth?" I'm like, I don't know what's funny about this, but I'm glad you're enjoying it.
There's no telling what people find funny. I personally sometimes will be laughing a lot at something and I'm like, it's impossible to explain to someone why this is funny. I think
those are usually the best laughs.
I think that's usually the guiding light behind like a lot of modern sort of Gen Z humor. It's impossible to tell why some of that stuff is funny.
Yeah.
Like, why is it funny that a word is just very slightly misspelled? Mm-hmm. Or just the bizarre combination of a word and an image that just don't really match together. Sometimes that's funny.
Yeah.
Like, the stonks meme?
Oh, yes.
Why is that funny? But I laugh every time I see that.
It's just something slightly askew. Maybe it's usually something just a little bit off kilter is like just very funny for some reason. You
would probably know that doing stand-up. Like there's probably things that make an audience laugh that maybe you don't even intend. And they just
that's one of my favorite parts of it is that there's little tiny changes or minute things you can do that completely change a joke, and they're just tiny, just maybe just an enunciation or something. Literally just changing one word and it can completely change a joke and make it 1,000 times funnier. And it's not really explainable. It doesn't really make any sense. It's just what ends up working.
And you can't predict it either. Like you can't write the joke to get that effect. It just has to happen organically on the night.
Yeah.
That's comedy, baby.
It is.
That's the business we call show.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be crazy to work here, but it helps. Well, so the first annual Jeffrey Combs Film Festival, as we've called it, because it's funny to think that we would do this every year. It's a whole weekend, so we'll have opening night, which will be Frightmare, which was one of his very first ever films. I think it's like 1981.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, we've got 3, Dr. Mordred, Phantom Empire, and Bride of Reanimator.
Okay.
So Bride of Reanimator, big fun, like Saturday night movie. And then Sunday afternoon leading into night, Lurking Fear, and then reanimator proper to close it.
That's pretty beautiful. That's gonna be a fun time.
Yeah, it's been really fun organizing it.
Dude, I love the description for Phantom Empire. It says lost city explorers find mutants, cave girls, dinosaurs, and a leather-clad space queen. Ticket, please. Weren't you gonna like what was the other, you wanted to do another series after this, you said? Who was the other person you wanted to do?
Bruce Dern?
Bruce Dern, okay. See, I would love to do like a Brad Dourif one or something like that.
I would also do a Brad Dourif. I was thinking about who I would do when I've run out of Jeff films, and I think it would be either Brad Dourif or Bruce Campbell.
Those are phenomenal choices. Yes.
Yeah. Because it's just like, it has to be someone who, when you see them, you're happy to see them in a film.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm watching something and Brad Dourif shows up, I'm so happy to see him.
Me too. I'm the same way. Bruce Campbell's and Jeffrey Combs are also great examples of that.
Yeah.
Whenever they pop up, you're just like, hell yeah, this is gonna be. Even if the movie sucks, you're like, or same another guy, Rutger Hauer's like that too.
Yeah.
Like every time they show up, you're just like, oh, this is gonna be good. At least this part's gonna be good.
I'm also I do have a particular affection for Andrew Divoff, Wishmaster.
Oh yeah, the Wishmaster. Yeah,
I love that guy.
He's great.
That's the thing about character actors, I guess. They've just got something about them, and there's just something in like, I guess, charm or charisma or just something unique and interesting about them that makes them sort of unable to stop watching them.
My own dad, he like does not care about hardly any actors. He doesn't give a shit. But like he'd watch anything with Bruce Campbell or Steve Buscemi. Those were the two. He would always be like, I would watch anything with either of those guys.
Oh yeah.
Anytime they pop up, I'll watch whatever that movie is.
I'm saying this without having done any research on it, but I feel like Steve Buscemi is one of those actors who is very choosy in his roles. So I feel like he doesn't pop up in as much stuff that could be not as good.
Yes, I agree with you.
I feel like he tends to choose his projects pretty carefully.
Yeah, he doesn't want to taint the legacy of Buscemi.
The Buscemi brand.
Buscemi brand, exactly.
Back to the Frighteners, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, we've gone off the deep end.
There's so much in this film that is interesting. It's impossible to sort of condense it down, which is why I didn't want to do like a beat for beat, because we'd be here for 4.5 hours. Notably, the thing I quite like is that I feel like Peter Jackson must be a decent director to work with. I feel like he cares about his projects enough. There's some footage, and it's not very good footage because for some reason he was only filming it to get the sound, even though I'm sure he could have gotten just tape recorder. I don't know. But there's footage of the actors, I think it's like the two ghost characters and Michael J. Fox, rehearsing just at Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh's home. Just like in their house, they're just like drinking tea. They're just hanging out and rehearsing. I think that's quite a nice touch.
Yeah. And isn't Peter Jackson's like little baby son in this movie as one of the little babies that gets like picked up and run around by the ghosts? Yeah,
that's him. Billy Jackson, the one who's in the bouncy romper thing.
Oh, like easily the cutest one. He's got like the little like curly hair, super adorable.
Yeah, very like big smiley baby, which is what you need.
There's like I remember there being like that part of the behind the scenes video of Peter Jackson's like talking to the baby, and it's such an adorable, because he's got that precious New Zealand accent. He's like doing like a little baby voice to his son, and it's so cute.
There's a lot of you wouldn't call them cameos, I suppose, but like there's a lot of people just ending up on the set in this film. Like Peter Jackson makes a cameo, I think, as he often does. He's the biker that Michael J. Fox's character bumps into, who has the Grim Reaper t-shirt. As you mentioned, Jackson Walsh's baby is in it. The maid in that scene, the rich lady's house where the babies get flown around. The maid in that scene is Jim Fife, who plays Stuart the ghost. That's his wife.
Oh, okay.
The way he explains it is that they basically just needed people that could do American accents. And
and she was just hanging around on set.
Well, he was like, my wife's an actress. You need people who can do American accents. She is American. Because, I think that in the same way that Americans probably think that they can do Kiwi accents, Kiwis probably think they can do American accents, especially non-regional American accents. Because I guess Kiwi is a particularly lugubrious accent in terms of like it has a lot of fun vowel sounds that go in different directions.
Oh yeah.
So I imagine it's very hard to do other accents. Every time I watch this film, I'm reminded of how much I loved and love Michael J. Fox as well. I know this is a Jeffrey Combs podcast, but
There's always
you know,
room for Michael J. Fox love, though. That's fine.
there's always room. He's iconic,
It's great.
brilliant. Also, genuinely seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, I love that documentary about him. I thought that was very well done.
It's beautiful, yeah, and it's very sad as well, but it's very respectful in terms of showing what a amazing career he's had, and just like for people like me, he's just been such a mainstay. Like I sort of can't imagine the movie Stratosphere without him in it.
Yeah,
there's a couple of scenes where he's meant to be yelling for the judge in the film, and he yells out for Doc instead.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, and I've been in the behind the scenes. They have to cut. He said Doc again. So funny.
I did see a little thing that I thought was strange where this is just on Wikipedia, but it's based on an interview that he did with The Guardian in 2020. Michael J. Fox was one of 4 people on the cast and crew of a sitcom called Leo and Me that he did, who developed early onset Parkinson's.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, apparently this isn't enough of a cluster to be defined, so it's not like it hasn't been researched, but like that's a weird coincidence.
It is.
For, like 4 people from the same TV show to all get the same disease.
It's like an early sitcom he did. 4 of the main actors got.
Well, it was four of the cast and crew.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he was only 16. It was one of the first things he did.
Wow. Okay.
It's fascinating, and I mean, he ended up saying in that Guardian interview, he says, "I can think of 1,000 possible scenarios. I used to go fishing in a river near paper mills and eat the salmon I caught. I've been to a lot of farms. I smoked a lot of pot in high school when the government was poisoning the crops. But you can drive yourself crazy trying to figure it out."
Okay. Wow. That's really interesting. That's definitely, yeah, they're not, it's just not, there's too many elements, and I don't think it's possible to figure it out.
It's sad and it sucks. The overarching thing that I really like in The Frighteners, in terms of tone, is how it is genuinely kind of scary. I mean, not for me, because I watch a lot of horror movies, so I'm not scared by anything. But I think that that's maybe like tonally why they had trouble marketing it, because it's got a lot of, it's got some dumb comedy and stuff like that, but it is kind of freaky. I mean, the Grim Reaper, literal death being one of the main characters is, it's creepy.
And like the scenes with, when they're getting stalked in the house by like Johnny Bartlett, and at the end when they're getting stalked in the hospital by him, and all that's all played pretty straight. It's not played for laughs. It's definitely played for horror, which definitely makes the film feel like less of an American movie, because most American films don't tonal jump like that. They don't genre shift like that. They're either one thing or they're not. You know what I mean? Like Ghostbusters is a comedy. There's horror elements, but they're never played like genuinely scary. Whereas this is for sure played. There's funny stuff, but then when the horror stuff comes on, they're not going for laughs in it. Like they're trying to, like, there's a different feel to it. There's a different atmosphere. There's a different tone. And that's a very non-American thing. Like Hong Kong movies do that all the time, where like they're jumping from one type of feel to the next. There's something very funny happens and almost immediately followed by something jarring, like violence-wise, where it's like it turns into an action scene, and that's feels completely different. But with those types of films, it's just like, it's here he is. We're trying to, we're trying to catch all the different emotions, and that doesn't happen in American films very much.
I do wonder if you compared this to other Kiwi films, whether it would look more like a Kiwi film than an American film to other people, even though ostensibly it's meant to be American, even though, again, that location, I've never even been to America, and that location doesn't look like anywhere I can think of in America.
Oh, it's clearly not America. Very, very blatantly not America. And I also thought it was funny how they used the same kinds of cars that they used in Dead Alive. It's like 50s cars. Around. It's like, why did they do that? Like, that's not because the movie's not set in the past. But everyone's driving around like old cars.
One of the things that they had to do was, because they had to make a New Zealand town look like an American small town. Apparently there was like a base nearby in New Zealand. It was like an American base for I think Alaskan exploration, something like that. And a lot of those people who worked at that base had brought their cars over from America.
Okay.
So they just like borrowed a bunch of cars from this base of American workers.
Huh.
But apart from that, the rest of it was all having to try to make it look like an American town.
One of the fun things about him in Reanimator is that he's neither the hero or the villain. It's like it's a very interesting role. Like, I guess it depends on who you would ask, because I think someone could watch it maybe from the perspective that he is the villain, or someone could watch it from the perspective that he's the hero. But to me, he's not really either one. I think that's one of the reasons that makes that part so much fun.
I kind of love that sort of like weird anti-hero stuff in Reanimator because he believes that what he's doing is good.
Totally. 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
He just has some not great ways of going about it.
Dubious methods.
Dubious, and some would say idiotic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he is very good at playing these characters that have, even if they're villains like Milton Dammers, they still have a fair amount of pathos. And
I still do music, but I used to do music a lot more, and I had a band called Nervous Energy, and I put out an album, and the title of it is a line from this movie that Dammers says during the interrogation scene when he's talking about like the motivations that Michael J. Fox would have to kill all these characters, and then he goes like, "But what about the guy in the toilet, Frank? What did he do to you? Piss on your hush puppies." And like, I fucking thought that was such a hilarious phrase that's what the title of my album is, "Piss on Your Hush Puppies."
Every little nuance of his performance seemed to stay with me, even just like, the various like tics that he has in twitching. But yeah, that's the Frighteners. I'm a fan.
I'm a huge fan. I like that was basically our first exposure to Jeffrey Combs was through this character, and it stuck with us this whole time. In a way, like I always like almost kind of use this as a barometer. I know more people would probably use Herbert West as the most iconic character he's played, but perhaps because this was the first one I saw, it's the one that I always think of. So I always think of him as Dammers first, and then Herbert West. But man, he's so much fun to watch, and I think this movie is such a phenomenal introduction to him. So it's probably what I would recommend first and foremost to people if you are wanting to say, if you want to see a fun Jeffrey Combs performance, then you should definitely see The Frighteners.
I don't think it's a great indication, like just because of how little he's in it, which is the only reason we didn't decide to show it for the film festival, because he's just not in it enough. But it is a good indication of his kind of work. It's an extension of him doing Herbert West because it's a similar vibe in terms of, in a complimentary way, chewing up the scenery. I know people use that as an insult, but I almost always use that as a compliment.
Yeah, I would definitely use that as a compliment for this particular performance. Like, he's chewing the scenery, and it's like he owns every scene he's in. He's the person in the scene that you remember. For sure. All
right, Chad, anything to plug? You're on the socials and everything?
Oh, yeah, just my name, at Chad Opitz, ChadOpitz. I always put, funny shit up on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. So, yeah, scope me out and keep watching fun Jeffrey Combs performances. This was very fun to talk about. Thank you, Lisa.
It was nice. Look, I love Jeff, but sometimes he does films that I don't love as much.
Yeah.
So it was nice to talk about a film that I genuinely really love and will always come back to, and not just because of Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah. He's not the only reason this movie works.
No, he's part of a well-oiled machine.
Mm-hmm. Which is not the case all the time. So he's usually the best part of a lot of his movies. Doing a lot of the heavy lifting. His back's got to hurt from holding up a lot of those movies.